So what happens when I get a client who's not quick, that they take more than 1 or 2 sessions to stop smoking? I'll give you an example from late last year. This gentleman told me that he'd always been able to make himself do or change a habit if he wanted to. He stopped drinking all on his own, and he comes in and says to me, I hate smoking, I don't want to do it anymore, I've had these health issues, it's time for me to stop. Well, but you have been smoking, so there must be something about it that you want. I do not want to smoke at all. This is like me engaging in marital counseling, and I get one spouse telling me that's their side and say, fix it. Because I didn't have, and given that he was that way, did not have access to the side of his personality that wanted to smoke, that liked to smoke, that thought it was necessary to smoke, that thought he had to smoke. And he told me that, if he got stressed, he would smoke. If he didn't smoke, he would feel stressed, distressed, anxious, and yet he didn't want to smoke, didn't like anything about it. Nope. So in the first session, I spent a lot of time with him saying, well, okay, fine, you don't want to smoke, you hate smoking, there's nothing good about it, and yet you have been. So you've not really been in control in that aspect. And he says, and he spent a lot of time telling me how awful it was that he couldn't just make himself stop smoking. Typically my clients spend a lot of time telling me, my problem is X, my problem is X, I've tried this, I've tried that, it's horrible, I haven't been able to do anything, my problem is X. And they're trying to hypnotize me into believing that it's impossible. Unfortunately for them, I'm a hypnotherapist, they're not going to be able to do that. And they're paying me not to believe them, which they find ironic and a little amusing when I point it out. So I spent a lot of time in that first session with him reflecting back what he was telling me and adding little bits and pieces to help him begin to loosen up that belief system. So you really hate to smoke, you don't want to smoke, you haven't been able to control it, it's got to be all or nothing, even if you make progress it doesn't count. These are all things he was telling me. And yet you must believe it's possible because here you are. So on the second session, it's a little looser, and he's still telling me, nah, don't want to smoke, don't like it, I was doing this, I was doing that. Now he's, and so I'm spending more time just reflecting back and saying and. That word and allows us to put a little something more into the thought. So you've been having all these difficulties. You were able to stop drinking just because you decided to, and you're not really recognizing that that's part of what you have as a resource to help you make these changes with smoking, because you struggled with that and have not been able to make yourself stop. So what that does is adds a little bit of leeway, a little bit of looseness in the belief. So I'm doing this for the third session. By the fourth session, he said, I've just been wanting you to do this to me, and just you do it all, and that's the end of it. I don't want to have to be engaged in this at all. I said, that's right. And that was progress, because I'm not a pill. You can't come into my office and sit down and I will do my whammy and then force you out of a habit. A lot of my clients think I can. If I could do that, boy, I'd be so rich. And the world would be a better place. I'd call up the wars and go, you guys stop fighting, find a way to get along. Yes, Wesley. It's impossible, and my job is to help people realize that what's possible is for them to be able to do it for themselves. So that was a breakthrough with him. He's also beginning to tell me, oh, well, I got stressed and then this helped me feel better. So he's beginning to recognize there are payoffs to him, the smoking. So there's two sides of it. He's afraid to not smoke because he thinks he's going to feel bad and be anxious. And he's smoking to help himself relax or deal with the boredom of a long drive, whatever it might be. So session 5 and 6, he's beginning to tell me, oh yeah, okay, so these are the things that have been going on, I've been wanting this, and as I'm using these more subtle ways of addressing it, he's telling me, well, he's smoking less. He cut from 2 packs or a pack and a half down to less than 1. And by the 7th session, thank you for the background music, and by his 7th session, thank you, he had cut down to 5 or so cigarettes a day. He'd light it, he'd take a couple of puffs and put it out. So I'm beginning to have more access to the side of his personality that was getting him to smoke. By the way, he told me the way he stopped drinking was that when he'd drink, he'd get really drunk and he'd have an awful hangover for the whole next day. He's worthless. Now, what that means to me is that when he looked at a drink, he thought, hangover, tomorrow, all day. And that's how he stopped. That was his process. That wasn't his conscious model of what happened. And I used that in part to help him stop smoking as well, because he had some big health issues that smoking was a concern. And by the time I finished with him, he's not quite ready to let go of all of it. For some reason, there's still some little thing that he's holding on to, but he's lighting 2 cigarettes, 1 cigarette, take a puff or 2, puts it out, and that's all he's doing in a day. And I encouraged him to come back if he ever wants to. He can, because with my program, he doesn't have to pay again. So that's why I structure the program as an unlimited lifetime program. On average, I see maybe 1 person in a month who needs some more help with smoking. Occasionally it's 2. Sometimes I go a couple of months and there's not anybody. So the great referral for me would be your friend who's struggling with stopping smoking, feels that she's absolutely hopeless because she's tried this, she's tried that, the drugs didn't work, willpower didn't work. By the way, willpower is successful about 9% of the time. My methods, research shows 96+%. Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy.